Without much further ado, I have three very, very amazing and powerful women literally with me today. So I take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Member of Parliament, Sushmita Dev, Honorable Member of Parliament, Aparajita Sarangi, and Honorable Member of Legislative Assembly, Atishi Singh. Here's a welcome to all three of you. Atishi, if we can request you to also keep your video on. I will be briefly introducing everyone and then we shall dive straight into our conversation. I'm really looking forward to hearing from each and every one of you. And post your opening remarks, we will have a brief panel discussion, which will be followed by an audience Q&A. And that is how the session is going to flow. So welcome. My name is Bhairavi Jani. I am an entrepreneur by profession. I'm a trustee of the Ananta Center and a fellow of the Ananta Aspen Kamal Nayan Bajaj Fellowship. It is my honor today to welcome Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha from West Bengal, Ms. Sushmita Dev. She's representing her state, West Bengal. Sushmita is not new to politics, nor is she new to Parliament. She has earlier also served on many other parliamentary affairs committees and steering committees, including the Committee on Women and Child Development. It is also my honor and pleasure to welcome Member of Parliament, Lok Sabha from Odisha, representing her party, Bharatiya Janata Party, Ms. Aparajita Sarangi, who took retirement, early retirement, from her job in the Indian Administrative Service, whose 1994 batch she's a graduate of. It is her experience in various roles during her bureaucratic career as well that she brings along with her commitment to public service. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you today, Aparajita. Last but not the least, I welcome Atishi Marlena Singh. She is a member of the Legislative Assembly for the state of Delhi, and she represents her party, Aadmi Party. Atishi is singularly responsible, along with a couple of her colleagues and certain civil society players, to bring about change in Delhi's public education system, opening up opportunity for more than 1.5 million children. Here is a welcome to all of you. I want to start first with you, Sushmita. You grew up in a political family. Your father was in politics, your mother was in active politics, and you've also led the Mahila Congress when you were with Indian National Congress. And so I want to start with you as to where do you think lie the opportunities? We all are aware of the gaps. What we want to talk about today are the opportunities for women to enter active politics.
See, the nature of politics as it stands in India, it's very, the most obvious and the natural path to join politics is through a party platform. Although we have many examples of dynamic women leaders coming through independent, forums, like standing in their own right as opposed to a party. But quite clearly, the path is much smoother and easier if you come through a party. Now, what stands in the way, like that we know the gaps that are there, is the number of women who are actually given representation within the party and during the election in terms of nominations. But I do believe that fighting elections is not the only way for a woman to participate in elections. Like you yourself said that I led the Mahila Congress, which when I was in the Congress party, as the national president. And I've seen enough women activism within the party. Not women who necessarily come and stand in an election, whether it's an urban local body, whether it's a Panchayati Raj, or whether it's an assembly or the Lok Sabha. But there are enough examples of women being actively politics at the organization level, and how an organization generally involves them in the party is because of political activism. Political activism will be another way. And having said that, I come to the most controversial topic, which is affirmative action. You see, affirmative action has been up in the air in this country for many decades, as you know, and many governments across party lines have tried to introduce legislation for affirmative action, but I mean, we all know that it's been a humongous task, it's been a Herculean task. There are so many diverse views on what should be the actual format of that legislation and how is the quota system going to work, what is the critical mass, the percentage. So there is no doubt that there is that debate which is up in the air in the country, and many parties have different views. But I think net everybody agrees that women should uh, be mainstreamed in politics, and one effective way to do it is affirmative action. And the reason for that is we have done it when it comes to the Panchayati Raj. As you know, the 73rd and the 74th Amendment to the Constitution actually propelled around 14 lakh women in Panchayati Raj and urban local bodies, and I believe they've proved their mettle. Another way of looking at mainstreaming women in politics, I think organically what has happened over the last decade, to be more precise, let's say since 2014, is the percentage of women voting has increased immensely. I mean, in 2014, 65.5% women voters cast their vote, and the percentage of men voting was 67.3, as compared to 2019, where the gap, closed even further. Like, for instance, men 68.3% men voted and 68% women. So one kind of political mainstreaming or political activity, if you like, that is a recent trend, well, fairly recent, not so recent. If you look at 2014, we are in 2022, is more and more women are voting. So we take pride in the fact that equality is not just an idea in this country, it's a right. We know it's enshrined in the Constitution. We know that adult franchise, one person, one vote, is something we admitted into our Constitution right at the start when we became a republic and an independent country. And there are several examples of Western countries who have had to struggle for women to even gain their votes. There are examples of European nations where women were not allowed to vote unless they owned properties, or there were certain criteria there, whereas India sets a different example. So another way of women participating more and more in politics is also the way they vote. You see, I believe that actually holds, it's extremely significant, because see, every woman who's politically active or politically agile or politically aware need not want to contest an election. Somebody may be in another field but wants to have a say in politics. So the trend of voting of women in India is something to watch out, something to study, and something to analyze. And given the fact that women are voting more, I have to say that every party, doesn't matter what their ideology is, every party has started looking at women voters as a separate vote bank. See, normally we see people saying, oh, this caste, that community, this religion, that zone, this state. But now it is increasingly becoming a trend in Indian politics to see women as a separate section of voters with unique needs and specific needs. And that also translates into policy making. So I believe that mainstreaming women is a challenge. It remains a challenge in this country. But I also have to say that we haven't done too badly, in the sense that I wish there were more women in parliament. For instance, I think right now the current data is 78 women parliamentarians out of 543. And in the 16th Lok Sabha, it was, I think, 62 out of 543. I may be a little off here and there. So it's an increasing trend. But obviously, it should have been much more. And if we go through the debates in the Constituent Assembly, there were 15 or 16 women in it who actually batted for no reservation way back in the 1950s, thinking that relegating women to a certain percentage, like 30, 40, whatever, 20, may be actually limiting them, given that we are a country where the women's population is almost 50%. It's 48.04, I think, when I last checked. So those are the trends. those are the trends. But I think there's lots to be said about the fact that we definitely need more women to take part in politics and governance. And I think that would be my opening note. And I have to say that I'm very happy to see Atishi and Aparajita on the panel. And thank you very much for holding this discussion, which is rather important for a country like ours.
Thank you so much, Sushmita. Coming to you, Aparajita, you had a career in administration, and therefore you probably seen participation of women in political as well as developmental causes at every layer and stature, probably starting with panchayats, looking at districts, and then the state and at the union level. Where do you see, given that proximity that you had from a very different lens, where do you see are the opportunities? There are, of course, more women, as Sushmita pointed out, in our panchayats, but there are also situations of sarpanch patis giving advertisements in the newspapers in rural India. So how do we make sure that women not only just have the participation and a voice and a seat at the table, but also have the power and authority and respect to execute that? Over to you.
I think Aparajita ji is on mute.
You're on mute, Apar.
A very good evening. I am delighted to be part of this August group, a group of such inspiring women. And it's very heartening to speak from this platform on an issue which is very close to our hearts: empowerment of women, safeguarding the dignity of women, and to see that women come forward. Women hold half the sky, as we know, Mao Zedong had said. I think that half the sky should be hers, and she should be able to write her name across that half of the sky. The issue is whether she's allowed to write her name across that half of the sky. My dear friends, I'm a great admirer of Maya Angelou. I keep reading her books, and I love 2-3 lines which I would definitely like to share with you. She said in one of her books, "You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I will rise." So she was referring to multitudes of women across the world who have the potential to come up, who just desire, who just look for, who just want a very conducive environment in which they can grow. Fortunately, if you look at the years that have gone by and the age that we are in, things are improving. There is going to be a favorable environment in the days to come, much more favorable environment, I can say. As far as my journey is concerned, I can only say that it has been quite a journey. Being a woman. In fact, I will start with one of the experiences that I had. My husband is my batchmate, 94 batch, as you mentioned, from the IAS. And we were both posted as sub-collector in 1996, I remember. And in my subdivision, the houses had caught fire. There was some kind of fire outbreak, and the collector of the district did not have the confidence in me at that point of time. He never thought I'd be able to contain, or rather handle, that situation properly. So he would look at my husband every time there was a question to me regarding my subdivision. So that outbreak of the fire was handled well, but he refused to acknowledge that I had put in all the efforts. He ensured that the other 2 male sub-collectors, and one of them, of course, was my husband, the other 2 male sub-collectors also went to my subdivision to see that things went off well. So this was, of course, 24 years back. But I don't think situation has very much improved in many of the areas, though things are improving. I must say, we must admit, it has been quite a journey. And I can say with conviction, all conviction at my command, that all of us, 3 of us, 4 of us are sitting together here. Many of us are listening to us. But I can only say that, women have to put in double the effort than the men, than their male counterparts. We have to put in. There is always a question mark on the ability of a woman to deliver. And for that matter, you really have to have the capacity, the potential, the ability to deliver. So I think we have to put in double the effort. This has been my experience. As far as politics is concerned, I can only say that it's heartening to see women in the Lok Sabha, as Sushmita was just mentioning, 78 women MPs in the Lok Sabha. But then if you look at the number 543, just 14.2%. It's a very 14.4%. And in Rajya Sabha, only 11.2% members are women. It's 27 women out of 241 members as of now in the Rajya Sabha. We have a long way to go, long way to go. It's not just important to ensure that women are able to vote, have the right to vote, which they have got years back. It's very important to see that they get elected, one, and number two, once they are elected, they're allowed to operate. In the administration, this particular expression has already been made. The experience has been of Sarpanch Pati. So every time, I would be working in different districts, different seats I would be in, the Sarpanch Patis would walk and speak on behalf of the women. And I think we all have to work together in such a manner that women are not just elected, women are also allowed to work. This is extremely important. It's heartening to know and to note that in 2019 general elections, women voters exceeded male voters in India. It's heartening to know that there are 8 female governors today. It's very important also to note and to appreciate that there are 11 ministers who are females in the Modi cabinet. So I think things are improving, things are taking the right turn. The right kind of schemes have to be in operation, right kind of schemes, both of the central government, both by the central government and the state governments have to come for 2 things. Whatever has been my experience, my humble experience all through 2-3 years in politics and the rest 24 years in the Indian Administrative Service, I can say with confidence that 2 issues pertaining to women have to be looked into. One, of course, is ensuring the dignity of women, Suraksha or Maryada Raksha. And number 2, of course, is economic empowerment. I think these 2 have to be ensured by people like us, by all of us. And women SHGs have played a major role in this regard. I always say that, we just can't be takers. We also have to be givers. And also, I would like to say that there has to be healthy competition between a man and a woman. We should not be feminists just for the sake of being feminists. We should ensure that, we are able to walk with men side by side. We need not try to walk ahead of men. We should not be behind them. We should walk hand in hand. It's very important to, hold hands and walk together towards the common goal that all of us have for the upliftment of the society in general. And you'll be very happy to know that, I was just going through the 2019 elections results. As far as my party is concerned, I'm sorry I'm bringing this element. I did not want to, but I just thought I would give this data to you. BJP distributed in 2019 56 tickets for the Lok Sabha and 41 won. Very good, 41 won, and this is 73% strike rate. But as far I was comparing with this with the male strike rates, and male strike rate was 66%. What I'm trying to say is women are very sincere, women are focused, women are hardworking, and women, if they know their goal, if they know about their goal, if they're given a conducive environment, they put in their best efforts. So we just have to create a kind of enabling environment, and they would definitely come up. I can say with confidence that women do not lack creativity, or they do not have lack of leadership ability. They can be leaders. They are hugely creative. They are very sensitive. And if you ask me, the best part about women is the degree of the sensitivity that they have, looking at things from a very empathetic point of view, I mean, this is something which I would definitely like to mention. Women are definitely, from men are from Mars and women are from Venus. So I think there is difference, and we just have to have a lot of faith, a lot of confidence in them. I'm sitting in my office as I'm talking to you. Just 10 minutes back, trust me, 10 minutes back, huge number of women came inside my room. So I just inquired about them, and the one was giggling, the Sarpanch. Our Panchayat elections have just concluded 3 days back in Odisha. I'm in Odisha, I'm in Bhubaneswar. And the woman has won. The Panchayat Samiti member and the Sarpanch both have won. Both women had come, and what a glow in their faces. And they said, we went from door to door. We convinced people about the work that we could do. And that's why we are here. You are the MP. You let us know when can that particular bridge in my Panchayat can be done. So I was so elated just 20 minutes back. This is the kind of environment that we have to create. We really have to stand by them, and they can do what they do. The right, it's very easy to formulate schemes for economic empowerment, for safety and security of women. It's very important to ensure that the central government and the state governments implement those schemes very well. And this Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao kind of scheme everywhere, many of the state governments have also come up with huge number of women SHGs, and women SHGs have been given ample work. So I think things are improving in the sense all over. The national sex ratio is improving. From 2014-15 to 2019-20, there has been a 16 points jump in national sex ratio from 918 to 934 today. So I think these are the things that we should be very, very happy about. Education is the key. Gross enrollment ratio from 77.45 to 81.32 in the last 7 years. So I think these are certain things which we should be happy about. We all need to work together. I always feel, there are certain issues where ideologically two political parties may not, kind of agree with each other. But there are certain issues which are above politics. Women issues are such issues above politics. We all need to join hands. I'm reminded of two lines of Sanskrit. Sangachadhvam samvadhvam sangvo manansi janatam. This means, may all of us move in harmony, speak in one voice, and may all our minds be in agreement. We all need to work together for this half of the population of our country. Thank you so very much. This is quite an opportunity. It's a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aparajita. We are going to come back to all of you with specific questions. But since you mentioned education, and here is a torchbearer of transforming public education, Atishi, welcome. And my question to you is, you didn't start out in life thinking politics would be a career. You didn't start out in life for doing the career that you've chosen. Where do you see is the role that education and society can play as systemic shifters in creating more opportunities for women to be in politics?
So thank you so much, Bhairavi, and thank you so much for inviting me to this program. And it was wonderful to hear both Sushmita ji and Aparajita ji before me. And so, when I was reading through the notes that I received from all of you, and you said that you wanted me to share maybe part of my journey about how I got into politics, what are the challenges that I faced. And it's interesting, I have many times spoken on panels on women in politics. And I often hear the journeys of many of my colleagues talking about this, about many of the challenges that they faced. And when I look back at my own journey, I think, interestingly, my own journey is marked probably by far more privilege than challenge. And the background that I came from, both my parents were professors in Delhi University, came from a progressive household, where daughters were given as much opportunity as boys would have been given in the household, where educating both me and my sister was a very high priority, where it was assumed that we would make our own life choices. And having studied from good educational institutions, be it St. Stephen's College, be it Oxford University, I think that the reality of my journey is probably the fact that unlike a lot of other women who are not just in politics, in many, many other fields, that in comparison to the journey of many women in this country, I came from a position of far greater privilege than I guess many, many women have the opportunity for. Because the reality of the country that we live in is that we come from a deeply, deeply divided society. We come from a deeply unequal society. And I think women face challenges almost in every domain. Forget the fact that politics, which in itself is a 24/7 living in the public domain kind of profession. For example, I always remember the journey of one of my friends, one of my friends who used to study with me at Oxford. She was a lawyer. She had studied at one of the national law schools, was doing her master's in law from Oxford University, extremely bright, extremely talented, got a job in one of the top law firms in London, but put off having her child till she became a partner in her law firm. Why? Because she felt that if she was to take a 1 year or a 2 year break, then she would no longer be on the fast track to become a partner. And that 2 year gap would have a long-term impact on her career. Now, no one should have to make a choice like this. But the reality is that even in mainstream careers, a lot of women have to end up making very difficult choices between their families, their careers. And here we are talking about a mainstream career. Politics is at one level far more challenging than a mainstream, be it a government or a private sector career. Why? Because politics is something that requires 24/7 involvement. Politics is something that does not, even in the most demanding of corporate jobs, there is a time when even be it 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., where your job does come to a standstill. But in politics, when you're an elected representative, if someone calls you at 2 a.m., you have to be available. If someone calls you at 4 a.m., you have to be available. If someone calls you at 6 a.m., you have to be available. If there is anything that happens, for example, there was a fire in my constituency about a year ago, happened in the middle of the night. It didn't matter if it was the middle of the night. So you have to be available for people as political representatives. So I think that this 24/7 life that is expected of an elected representative, expected of someone who's in the public domain, is definitely far more challenging for women than it is for men. And I think that is a reality that we have to accept. And that is a reality that for all practical purposes shows up in all political parties. And I have thought long and hard about this question of what is it that we should be doing to increase representation of women. And yes, there is a lot that has to be done on education, healthcare, empowerment, and I will come to that. But I think that if we really want to improve the representation of women in politics, then reservation for women is the only way. Because the fact of the matter is that when anyone is coming from a marginalized community, that is the only way that they would be. See, a democracy is a highly competitive space. Democracy is very much like the market, right? You have to be competitive, you have to be winnable. And any party would clearly want someone to contest if that candidate can win the election. And therefore, the idea that you can never have affirmative action just from a political party, because the compulsion of the democratic system is that it's such a competitive space that you would want to put your best foot forward. So therefore, to provide a systematic change to increase women's representation, I think that reservation is the only answer. I think that even in India today, the fact that SCs, SCs and STs get representation is only and only because there is reservation. And I see the fact that when we have to make decisions even within our own organization, because the fact is that when you have a seat that is reserved for someone from a scheduled caste or a scheduled tribe, which may be a very marginalized community, but then you have to look beyond those who have access and privilege. And therefore, I feel that reservation is definitely, it is essential I mean, if we are very seriously looking towards increasing women's representation in politics, it is not going to happen till one provides reservations for women in politics. There is a lot that is often said about, and I heard that term used here also, Sarpanch Pati, or because we do politics in Delhi, Parshad Pati. I would personally still prefer that situation to the lack of reservation. Because what happens is that the fact that there is reservation means that women who may never have stepped out of their households, out of maybe even their kitchens, or looking after their children, the very traditional roles that exist in our society, do step out into the public domain. Even if they are basically contesting with their husbands, they have to validate that they have not seen. And so therefore, even if you have candidates who are contesting on behalf of their husbands or their father-in-laws or their fathers, etc., the fact is that those women will step out of the house. The fact is that those women will go door to door, knock on every door, because that is the power of democracy. The fact is that when you do have the house, be it the municipal council, be it the panchayat meeting, be it the legislative assembly, it is the actual member of the legislative assembly or the municipal corporation who has to go into the house and speak and express themselves. So I do think that, and I have seen some remarkable transformative journeys that have happened with women who may have started off as placeholders for their husbands or for other male members in their families, but eventually really did become their own political persons. And even when their seats afterwards did not remain reserved, actually went on to remain sarpanches and councillors because they came into their own. And so, which is why I think that despite all the problems of sarpanch patis and parshad patis, I think that this is definitely reservation is something that we should have if we are looking to increase representation. In the long run, however, I think that the only way that we are going to have women's representation in all domains, be it political, be it economic, be it as social leaders, I personally believe is by investing in education and healthcare. I think there is no other way. And these are two basic things which women still do not have access to. I remember once going into a government school. This was many years ago when we just started our work in Delhi. And this was a girls' school. And I remember asking the girls in the assembly, how many of you have brothers in private schools? And 90% girls raised their hands, right? So when the family has money to spend, only that much disposable income to send one child to a private school, which they think provides better education, they send their son to a private school. They send their daughters to a government school, thinking, कि भाई क्या फर्क पड़ता है उसको कैसी भी पढ़ाई मिले. When it comes to a question of access to healthcare, in terms of access to healthcare, there is women don't go to doctors. When their children fall sick, women still take their children there, whatever. Other family members go, but women think, chalo haldi se, adrak se, tulsi se ilaj kar lo. Why? Because they know the fact that doctor is going to take 500 rupees. They know the fact that medicines will cost 500 rupees. They know the fact that any diagnostic test will cost 500 to 1,000 rupees. And this entire package of 1,500 to 2,000 rupees is going to disrupt the budget of the month. So women actually get a lot of chronic diseases because they do not go to the doctor on time and do not get themselves treated. So till governments invest in providing high quality education and high quality healthcare to every person, irrespective of whether they are rich or whether they are poor, that is what is going to empower women, and that is really what is eventually going to create a level playing field. I will stop for now, and then we can move on to more discussions as we move forward in the panel.
Thank you so much, Atishi. I want to go back to, the point you all are raising about affirmative action and reservation. And Sushmita, your party, the All India Trinamool Congress in the West Bengal Assembly elections that concluded last year, actually had record number of women candidates. But one is to make provision at a party and at a system level. The second is to have capacity within the system, within women candidates themselves, to be able to fight elections, when get elected, do their duties. What kind of interventions, what kind of activities, what kind of investments are needed for something like that. At the Iceland Women in Political Leader Conference, there was a lot of conversation about the fact that in overall, globally, the investment made in education, especially in capacity building of women political leaders, was far less than what was needed. So where do you think are the opportunities to build capacity in women political leaders? You're on mute, Sushmita.
I think there is no formal training for how to do politics. Politics is so dynamic. It depends on which region you're from. It depends on your constituency, depends on your party, depends on so many things. So I think what equips a woman to enter politics, mainstream politics, if you like, is education, like Atishi said, is extremely important. And she spoke about healthcare, and I couldn't agree more with her. But also is to make politics a safer space. You see, inherently, whether we want to accept it on record or no, the general impression, and rightly so, about electoral politics is it involves huge amount of resources. It involves, you may face violence, in elections. So that is one major deterrent to women coming to politics. You see, which is the formative, which is the form in your formative years when you are 18. That's when you actually first interact. You discover politics when you go to college or university. Like I started when I was in Miranda House. I fought for president of the Miranda House. So at that point of time, the age is such that your family is bound to have a say in what you do. And most families do not allow women to enter politics at that stage unless they are much older and they can decide for them, is violence and lack of resources, whether we like it or not. So, how do we make politics a safer space? And I think it's a collective responsibility of the election commission, of the parties, of the government, because every election involves central forces and state forces. So, how that can come into play, I mean, I can't really opine on it right here. And the second thing is capacity building, what you're talking about, Bhairavi. Frankly, there are not that many parties which invest their time, money, resources into capacity building for women. Like they'll train you. I mean, there are training sessions that happen in political parties. I've done many myself, but specifically to for capacity building for women in a focused way is still, is still on a back foot. So that is one thing that the parties could think of doing. And apart from capacity building, I think that the key to having more women in parliament or assemblies is conviction of the leader. And not just the leaders at the top, like not the chairperson of Trinamool Congress or the Congress president.
I think we lost her. She may join again. But I want to come to you, Aparajita, and continuing on the thought that Sushmita was on, which is that how do you create sort of capacity? But it's also how the political parties are structured, and there is something to be said about the structuring of this entire institution that is your gateway into politics, if you will, be it male or female candidate. Sushmita, I'm going to come back to you. I've just started something with Aparajita, and then I'll come back to you. So,
That's fine. That's fine.
To someone who was not from political field, Aparajita, where do you think you thought those were the changes? If they were there in the party organization, it would have made it easier for a woman to, be more involved and feel more confident about her chances of success.
Any profession that you talk of, Bhairavi, has some kind of capacity building system, right? I talk of the administrative service. In fact, when we went to Mussoorie Academy, there was rigorous training for both males and females. We were taught about many things, how to deal with people, what to do, what not to do, what is sistachar, and a whole lot of things were taught to us. And I'm sure this is for every profession. But as far as politics is concerned, as Sushmita said, I entirely agree. This is a very dynamic kind of thing that we go for, and every political party has its own ecosystem. There has to be a lot of respect for women who come into a party. Any political party, every political party I'm talking of, should have a lot of respect for women who come to it. And there has to be some kind of capacity building a capsule. But unfortunately, there is not a framework as of now in place. I'm talking of my party. There is not a framework as of now. There are training sessions where hundreds of women come, and there are lectures on issues. But I'm talking of identifying the gaps, identifying the needs. I would say that would be a proper word. Identifying the needs. It's subjective in nature, and then holding the hand and telling what to do, what not to do. But unfortunately, so far something very formal has not been able to kind of come onto the table. I think it should be there. Many of the women who come from below, there are two kinds of people who come to politics. One, those who have the legacy, father, mother, grandmother, grandparents, in politics. So for them, it is very easy. A woman coming from that particular family, it's very easy for her. There is some kind of regard, some kind of awe, some kind of respect right from the beginning. But there is another category which comes from nowhere. On the basis of their conviction, on their strength, and because of their desire, they come into political field. And for them, it's very difficult, very difficult. Hey, there is a woman here in my constituency in Bhubaneswar, right from Sarpanch, she went up to the level of being an MLA now. And one day I was sitting with her and I was listening to her about her whole journey. And she has almost come from nowhere within quotes. She has no background. And it has been quite a fight for her, quite a struggle for her. So I think for those women, there should be, it's not just enough to have an enabling environment. All are good, everything is fine, you come and sit and you study. It's not like that. There should be some formal, yes, capacity building initiatives to be introduced by all the political parties. I think that would be a very good thing that we would be doing. But at this juncture, I can only say that a lot depends on women too. Ultimately, a woman has to struggle. A woman should have that resilience, that inner strength, very much required. I tell you, my own experience. My parents were teachers. I come from that family. Nobody in politics so far. Nobody, nowhere. Nobody. But then, educated family, everything fine. But I can say with all confidence and, with all belief that, we need some kind of training, some kind of capacity building initiative, and it should be introduced by the political party. Yes, conducive environment is also very important. I'm not saying no to that. Every family, the family where the woman decides to get into politics should provide that conducive environment. The entire journey starts from the family. The husband has to be cooperative. The in-laws have to cooperate. The children who are adults, who are seniors, should also cooperate with the woman who has come out. So I think it's a whole lot of people who need to cooperate and who need to create that conducive environment. And that political party in which she gets in also should have a welcoming approach. I feel disgusted. I tell you, many of the places I have voiced my opinion, much to the annoyance of many people around me in my party. You go to a party's meet and you find the women relegated to a particular job. And what's that job? Offering flowers to the guests on the dais, right? Giving some kind of welcome speech or some kind of vote of thanks, nothing in between. So I think giving flowers, at the entrance when people come, you have to hand over flowers, and that's the women of the party doing. I'm not saying it cannot be done by them, should be done by them. In addition to that, there should be some some difficult roles also to be given to, some challenging roles also to be given to women in the party. But I think a lot, as I said, a lot depends on women too. They have to realize that potential. It's a very difficult arena that women get into. It's a very difficult arena, very difficult, very challenging. You cannot be less than anybody. And in politics, nobody leaves you space. So you need to have the knowledge and you need to know how to take everybody together. And pleasant persona, pleasant by pleasant persona, I mean a positive persona. And there has to be tremendous capability, inner strength, resilience, as I said. So I think a lot depends on the environment, a lot depends on the political party, and a lot depends on the woman who gets into politics.
Thank you. Sushmita, I'm going to come back to you. And while you complete your train of thought, you brought out a very important thing about safety, right? Which every woman desires in any professional environment. In politics, that also becomes far more challenging. In your own alma mater, a couple of years ago when I was in Miranda House, having the same kind of conversation with young college girls, one of the girls actually said, whenever you talk about women entering politics, I think of J. Lalita and on the floor of the house, not being treated well, and it scares me. And she was from Tamil Nadu but grew up in Delhi, went to Miranda House. So what can we do also? Of course, there needs to be more safety, but there is also perception around safety that may be sometimes misconstrued, that women are actually quite unsafe in politics.
See, I think men, women equally are safe or unsafe in politics to the same extent, if you ask me. I mean, the factors I'm talking about, one is resources and two is violence. That is an issue. It's a gender neutral issue. It impacts both genders. You see, but what I feel is what it actually takes is conviction. Now, let me give you an example of Mamata Banerjee, the Honorable Chief Minister of Bengal. See, she knows that she has the organization, she knows that she has the brand. So she basically used her branding, she used her name, she used her organization to actually propel women into politics. You see, today, whether any candidate who wins needs the complete backup, of, like Aparajita ji said, of the men in the politics or in that constituency and your leaders. See, if I win an election, I don't win it alone because I'm fully backed. You see, from my family, from workers, from my leader who are pushing for me to go out there and fight. So I think any leader at whatever level, if they decide, like somebody talked about family politics. Like I come from a political family. My father was in politics, my mother was in politics, my grandfather was in politics. So for me, the entering politics was much easier than someone who has absolutely no connection with politics. In a situation like that, you need the top leaders to say today, let's say Arvind Kejriwal ji. He's a big name in Delhi. Today, he's the chief minister of Delhi. Today, he knows that it matters that a lot of people vote for the Aam Aadmi party, and a huge factor in that is Arvind Kejriwal ji as a brand name or as a name. Now, if he decides that my party is doing really well in Delhi, so now I'm going to put more women. If there is something called the Modi factor and everybody is voting for Narendra Modi and his good work and if he actually believes in it, that they can pull people through, then he should have the conviction to give 50% women. So it takes conviction of the leader. And that is really the key to it. Affirmative action has so many condition precedents and so many debates happening. One way to overcome that is if a leader at the top really believes that they have done enough work and is the work that's going to win the image. These days leaders spend a lot of money in PR exercises. If they believe they have that pull, that strength, then they should use that to actually put more women in the electoral foray. And I think Mamata Didi has done that. She's brought in fresh faces, made them stand and made them win. There's Nusrat and all these people from the acting line also who have won in Bengal because Mamata Banerjee decided I'm going to use my political, my political organization, my political strength to make sure there are more women. It talks a lot about conviction.
Thank you, Atishi. I'm going to come to you before I open up to the audience Q&A for everybody. You know, this thing about the societal and family support, and you come from a non-political family. When you decided to join politics, and this happens to many women and men alike, but more to women, as to where the family says that that is no place for a woman from a decent family to be. I've heard this time and again. How do we fight these social norms? What do we need to do collectively as society, as leaders, as Sushmita says, leaders of the political party, also as Aparajita said, in the government? What do we need to do in terms of setting the right role models, setting the right narrative about encouraging women to join politics? Atishi, you're on mute.
Bhairavi, why just women? I feel that most people from the kind of background that I came from would never ever have considered the possibility as we passed out of college. We would have considered many professional options, but for a middle class educated young person with a good degree in your bag, you would never consider electoral politics as an option. You would never. And it's interesting that I look back, because I was always very oriented towards bringing social change. And even from my younger days, when I was doing my undergrad degree. And so what is the domain, sort of the continuum would just maybe start at non-profit organizations, go to think tanks, go to maybe organizations, UN related organizations, could probably go to the greatest extreme. It would go to social movements like the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which in my college days was like a rite of passage. Any student who was interested in doing something in terms of social change would definitely have spent some time at the Narmada Bachao Andolan. But never ever would you think that one can get into electoral politics. Why? Because young people, children from or people from decent families maintain decent distance from politics, because this is how things are. And not just for women. I think that politics has been considered inaccessible for people from regular middle class families, because what is going to open your doors into politics? I don't come from a family either of wealth or of political backgrounds. So I think it is for anyone who is coming, I mean, if you were to look, I do not wish to comment on any specific person, as this may be the case. But I think this is a reality that most women who are elected representatives today are either coming from backgrounds where their fathers, husbands, grandfathers are politicians, or they are coming from backgrounds of extreme wealth. And the reality is, because there is no entry point. It is only because this was Aadmi Party. And it was, in fact, interestingly in my own journey, this question of when I decided to join politics, in some ways, this question never arose, because it just happened very organically. When I started as a volunteer for India Against Corruption. I used to do policy research at the time of the Anna Andolan. And then India Against Corruption became Aam Aadmi Party. And I sort of transitioned into a volunteer who used to work for Aam Aadmi Party. And then at some point of time, people were needed to do policy research and write manifestos. So one showed up for that. And then some people were needed to go on television, because the party did not have, especially English speakers. And so then I went on, like, I think my first entry into television was when no one was available for an NDTV program. Like, acha kaun jayega, kisko angrezi aati hai, acha Atishi ko bhej do. And interestingly, even when I started working in the first tenure of the Aam Aadmi Party government, I used to work as an advisor to the Deputy Chief Minister. My work was predominantly on education. And even then, I don't think that I would have really thought that I would get into electoral politics. But politics has a logic of its own. The entire battle between the Delhi government and the central government. I was removed by the MHA as advisor to the Deputy Chief Minister. And that is really when my journey into electoral politics started. When then my party decided to make me contest the parliamentary elections the year after that. And so personally for me, there was never any specific point in the journey where I thought, okay, now I am stopping everything else and getting into politics. But for me personally, the journey was really a journey of almost straight out of my college years, even after my postgrad, was a journey of how can one bring social change. And I think I would have covered the entire gamut of possibilities, right from social movements to working with nonprofits, to teaching in schools, to working in villages, to working in social movements, to doing sort of social sector consulting, only to realize after sort of a decade of this journey is that we didn't seem to move the needle very much in terms of bringing transformation. And that is the reason why, if I was to look at myself, I don't think politics is an easy journey. I don't think politics is an easy life for anyone. Actually, ever since I have come into politics myself, I have acquired a great admiration and appreciation of politicians of all hues, even from other political parties that I disagree with, because I think it is an extremely difficult and challenging profession. And in this profession, of course, for anyone who's coming from a marginalized background as a woman, someone who's from a minority community, someone who comes from an SC/ST background, definitely becomes more difficult and challenging. But the fact of the matter is that even when we look at this deep inequality, politics is the only way to change it. And because finally, all major decisions that affect our lives and affect our society and affect possible transformation in this society are made by politicians. Be it in terms of education, healthcare, access to employment, who gets opportunities, who does not get opportunities. All these decisions are made by politicians. And so while, yes, politics may not be a safe space, politics is a challenging place to be, politics, be it women, be it men, I think all kinds of questions about your personal life, about your choice, everything comes into the public domain. But despite all of that, I think that I would think it is a journey worth embarking on, despite all its difficulties, is because this is really where social transformation can happen. And even for women, yes, it is deeply unequal. But I think if all of it was hunky-dory, then maybe most of the people who are in this panel also may not actually be in politics. I can think of much better and easier ways to spend my life and time than to do what it is that we do.
Thank you so much, Atishi. So, there have been a lot of questions, and I'm going to try and club some of the questions in lieu of the time we have. One of the questions, I think one or two of the questions are around capacity, of course, but also the fact that how easy it is for women to rise. We talk about, glass ceiling in corporate field. So any one of you could answer this question, but, how easy it is for women to then rise within the structure to either lead a party or to be a cabinet minister, or, of course, we had a woman prime minister, but that was 40 years ago. So, how easy it is for women, in your opinion, to rise and break the glass ceiling in politics? Any one of you? Aparajita, please.
Yes, it's definitely not easy, very difficult, I would say very challenging. I think it takes a lot of courage for women to come out of their homes and embark on the journey, this kind of journey, be in political profession. I think anybody, any woman who would get into this profession would be knowing the challenges of the job. You have to prove yourself. As I said, you have to put in double, treble the effort that the male counterparts would do. And let me tell you honestly, there are sharks all around. And in politics, nobody leaves the space. So you have to have a very accommodative personality, and at the same time, very assertive personality. But at the same time, you should mean you should walk the talk, and at the same time, you should have the ability to take everybody along. So I think it's a very strong personality which would be clicking in politics. And for a woman, it's extremely difficult unless and until the woman gets the support of all, the family, the political party, the seniors, the juniors. I think it would be very difficult. But then yes, somebody from Sarpanch to being an MLA, or somebody going up and up to the level of the cabinet minister, Destiny also plays its part. I can only say that. It's not that a person who would be entering politics would not aspire to become the cabinet minister. I'm sure he or she would be aspiring, but at the same time, she should be ready for handling all the challenges.
Sushmita, there's a question I think might be best suited to answer this. Are there hidden barriers in our political system that keep women in specifically away from joining politics? Some of them you mentioned, but some of them apply to both the genders. Are there specific gender-oriented barriers for women to succeed in politics?
Gender-oriented barriers. I mean, I don't know what the word hidden means, honestly, because it's pretty open. What are those barriers in politics? See, it's also gender roles that hold us back. To say, नहीं महिलाएं कहाँ politics में जाएंगी? You know what I mean? Gender roles. See, today Atishi, me, and Aparajita, we all come from a different background, a certain background. But if you look at the more disempowered women, women who are, if you like, come from not so educated classes or who have to work for a living, it becomes much, much more difficult for them. So, I mean, that is one thing. And the second thing is, I think the main problem is the mindset, the gender roles, that women can do this and women can't do that. There are examples of enough empowered women, and at the same time, there are lakhs and crores women out there who can't even fathom doing politics. That's the irony of this country. You just said we had a women prime minister, we had a Lok Sabha speaker who was a woman, we have a finance minister who's a woman, we've had a women chief ministers, but at the end of the day, the reality is those are great examples. We epitomize them. But the fact is that the masses remain very, very, very disempowered till now. And I mean, how many times have we debated this? I think in this month, this is the third time I'm debating the same topic, which means, I mean, Atishi is laughing. She knows what I'm talking about. So this is a real problem, and I come back to that only way and the fastest way and the surest way to rectify this is affirmative action. And there is no two ways about it. There is no two ways about it. And the faster we do it, it will not only be the largest political reform, it will actually be tantamount to a social reform. There's no other way to, do it. And, also I want to say that we are always talking about barriers, but one thing has to be said to be fair, to give a fair picture, that many times you also get something because you're a woman. So if I'm competing with my male counterpart from my state for a ministry, they'll say Sushmita ko de do, mahila bhi hai aur Assam se bhi hai, dono ko tough full ho jaye. You understand? So it sometimes works both ways. So I mean, Atishi is nodding, she'll agree with me. So they'll say isko de do, she covers scheduled caste or scheduled tribe also, and she's a woman also, dono fulfill ho jata hai. So there's small advantages also being women. Let's not undermine the power of that. I mean, when men get beaten up in politics, they don't get that much of coverage or attention, or there's not so much. And like, I remember when I got beaten in Tripura, I mean, the media was like, what's happened? What's happened? So we have few advantages also there. And I think that's what we shouldn't undermine that. But having said that, I think the obstacles clearly outweigh the advantages. There's no doubt about that.
Thank
I
you
will,
so
in
much.
fact, like to add something to what Sushmita said. It's not just that, even from like I used to see, I had an interesting observation when I was campaigning for my elections, is that a male candidate gets access to only male voters, because it is that is something that because society is like divided. If you're having a meeting in the front part of the house or in the public area of the house, only men would be available for conversation, for campaigning, and a male candidate can never step inside the house, which a woman candidate can. And so that even in terms of electoral politics is, in fact, there was an interesting observation. I remember one of my colleagues, maybe not very educated, or like upper caste male, probably with all the biases. I remember we went to some program in which, some traditional program in which men and women were sitting separately. So I was just discussing with him as we were entering, ki bhai, you think I should go inside, I should sit out. So some discussion I was having. So I was like, there are no women who are sitting here. So he said, Madam, नेता ना नेता होता है, नेता कोई महिला और पुरुष नहीं होता. So once people accept your position of power, then sometimes then that distinction also goes away. And the reason I quote this is because the specific person who said this is someone who would like have all the biases that we often talk about, who is not coming from a progressive, elite, English-speaking, cosmopolitan background. And this is also true. And as a woman, you do get that advantage in electoral politics, that my ability to reach out to women is much higher. I can reach out to men because they accept the fact that ye to neta hai. And then additionally, you can reach out to women. So I think it's also a question of playing to your strengths, which is something that one would advise anyone when children from our family take entrance exams, right? We tell them play to your strengths, like focus on the areas that you are good at. If you're good at maths, then spend more time of your paper solving the maths rather than the physics and the chemistry problem. So I think that politics also needs to be approached similarly. That one can look at it, there's no doubt that there are obstacles, but one can either look at it from a point of view, okay, oh, there are so many obstacles, oh, there are so many challenges, oh, it is so unequal. Or we can look at it in such a way that, yes, this is the reality of how the country is. And now let us try and find solutions to move forward from here.
Thank you so much. We are out of time. I truly wish we could continue discussing. Sushmita, Aparajita, Atishi, I thank you for showing the upside. And I think that very, very rarely happens. And I must congratulate you for not just wearing the baton, but also being able to be very open and vocal about what needs to be done, which is, I think, fantastic. I think everyone benefited not just from your personal experiences, but also your observations of what you've seen in your field. Thank you. And I do hope that whether it is through capacity building, affirmative action, role building, good leadership, that we have more and more women like you in politics, the country definitely would be better off it. I want to thank all our audiences who are joining us from everywhere else. Thank you for joining us on the second day of Leveling. And tomorrow we shall reconnect again at 3 p.m. to continue conversation on parity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Lovely talking to all of you.